Many of those who spoke and attended the citizens' hearing admitted they didn't fully understand why President Reagan is cutting the budget, except that the proposed cutbacks will affect them and their families. Several came from surrounding counties to tell the panel what hardships they're suffering now and how much more difficult it'll be if their food stamps, daycare centers, legal services, housing programs, unemployment compensation, aid to dependent children, and Medicaid is cut back or cut out. Panel members questioned those who say they'll be directly affected by the proposed cutbacks. The answers gathered at today's hearing will be forwarded to the Alabama congressional delegation in Washington. The director of the Alabama Coalition Against Hunger, Bill Edwards, told the group the majority of citizens don't want Reaganomics and don't want massive funding transferred from social programs to the military during peacetime. He says letting the congressional representatives know just how they'll be affected is one way of fighting back. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Alabama, the beautiful, you're beautiful to me.
Besides Alabama's variety of historical attractions, it's one of the few states that offers both snow skiing and warm, sunny beaches. And according to the Alabama Bureau of Publicity and Information, both tourists and Alabamians themselves are discovering these attractions.
Tourism is up this year over last year. We generated $2.3 billion within the state of Alabama, and that resulted in over $90 million being paid into the state treasury. That's about 17% of all that was collected. And in other words, in tourism, it provides 62,000 jobs in the state of Alabama.
North Alabama, boasting the Space and Rocket Center, has replaced the beach area in attracting the most tourism.
Well, of course, the Hurricane Frederick that hit the Gulf Shores in 1979 has had a great effect on the traffic in that area. A lot of people have forgotten it's almost been 2 years.
Ms. Kavanaugh says Florida sends Alabama the most visitors over any other state. She says many Florida residents are originally from the north, and they come to Alabama to see the hills and the change of seasons.
Your mountains reach up and they touch the sky, and your streams run cold and clean.
Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
To kiss the shore, your white sand beaches.
Test, 1, 2.
The first 4 or 5 months that we've been here has been just overwhelming as far as our...
Big orange, sure. That's even hard for me to say. Well, I tell you, I'm very honored that Coach Dye selected me to be one of the honorary coaches for tomorrow night's game.
But we're taking it pretty seriously.
How I think you'll agree we've got the best talent, right?
Remember, I told you that I'd be the guy in the white hat, the one they're carrying off the field when the game's over.
I'm going to make a prediction right now. The Orange 35-17 over the Blue.
Blue 20, Orange 6.
You don't have much
Defense.
confidence in your offense.
Defense.
All right. Look forward to it, Phil.
It was only fitting and proper that the man who guided the Black Institution for 28 years to its centennial year deliver the commencement address to the Tuskegee Institute graduates. Dr. Foster has given several addresses, but this one was momentous because it was delivered on what Dr. Foster called an historic day and centennial year, and also because it was his last address as president of the college. Dr. Foster didn't acknowledge his leaving, but rather challenged the 700 centennial graduates to overcome the world's troubles and conflicts by promoting full productivity, excelling in professional accomplishments, and accepting personal responsibility by helping the social interests flourish. Dr. Foster says how Tuskegee grows in its second centennial year depends on the success of each graduate who he says has helped tell the historic Tuskegee story. After presenting the last centennial diploma, Dr. Foster congratulated the class of 1981. Dr. Foster says he's positive each graduate will continue the leadership and service dream of its founder.
When it comes to Tuskegee, spends even a short time without sensing what that was all about and really extending it.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News, Tuskegee.
We got more than that, but that's more than we had out here in this place.
Hey, don't talk about them red cars.
There are only two video discs currently on the market, the RCA Select Division and the Philips MCA laser system marketed under the Magnavox brand. Another system is expected to be available later from JVC. Before we get into the specifics of each machine, one thing to keep in mind. All models are playback units only. In other words, you can't record on the discs. You can only play back pre-recorded movies or programs. And all three systems are different, which means none of the discs are interchangeable. The Philips MCA unit uses a tiny helium neon laser beam to pick up the pictures recorded on the 12-inch discs. The discs spin at a speed that varies from 1,800 RPMs down to 600 RPMs as the laser beam moves from the inside to the outside of the disc. At normal speeds, the disc player has 30 minutes per side. This unit offers a number of special features, including stereo sound, up to triple speed playback, freeze frame, variable slow motion, and single frame forward and reverse play. On the RCA model, a 12-inch disc is contained inside a protective sleeve that, once in the player, spins at 450 RPM with a stylus similar to a conventional record player used to pick up the pictures on the disc. It plays 1 hour per side. As for its features, the RCA unit has forward and reverse visual search, rapid access to individual time segments, and fast queuing from one end of the recording to the other. By the end of the year, RCA will have about 300 different selections available on discs, ranging from classic to current movies, sporting events, and special programs, with Magnavox not far behind in the number of selections available. But what does it cost?
In most cases, you can buy a disc for as little as $14.95. That's for a movie of your choice, not just the soundtrack, but the whole movie, up to 2 hours on the record. And this, from $14.95 to around $24.95, is usually the price of the movies.
The disc manufacturers also claim that their units have a better picture and better sound than home videotape recorders. As for the price, both units were designed to sell in the $500 to $600 range, considerably less than many home videotape recorders. The manufacturers also say that their units should complement the recorders like phonograph records and audio tape recorders do now, with customers using their VCRs to record television news and other current programs, while depending on their video discs for high-quality playback of motion pictures. This is Bob Howell, WSFA TV News.
Well, first of all, Gina, let me say I doubt that any of us like to have, like to see any adjustment charge for whatever. And maybe that's the first thing that's wrong. But really what gets down to being, I think, basically wrong in the system that we have now is that when the figures are presented to the commission by the company, that the commissioners have no authority whatsoever. When the fuel clause was implemented back in 1975, I believe it was, initially, as we know it now, it became an automatic thing. That's the way it was brought into effect. So there's only a cursory review of the figures and the projections. And Commissioner Folsom or myself or the third commissioner, when one gets here, have any discretion. And I think we should have a more formal type hearing to be able to say yes or no, or to adjust the figures according to what might come out differently in the hearing, you know, if the facts presented would happen to actually not be the facts. So we're going to look at all of that.
My honest and personal opinion about the fuel adjustment is it's just another way to charge us more for our electricity every month. Okay, calling it fuel adjustment or whatever they want to call it, I think that it is just a way to raise our rates without actually bypassing the PSC. I believe that what they're actually trying to do now with the fuel adjustment in the past and right now is that they're just trying to extract that much more money out of their customers every month and not have to have an approval by the PSC and not have to show anything. You've got to understand that when they asked for this $12.86, one of the highest that they've ever asked for, they only give the rate analysis people 3 days to prove their figures was wrong.
This adjustment clause or rate FT is designed to cover in a timely manner variable operating costs that go on from day to day. Now, also, this formula came from the Public Service Commission. And whether this particular formula needs some change or not, I don't know. But if the change is for the best, if it helps us recover our costs on the coal, then we would certainly work with them and have no objection to any small change they wanted to make.
I don't believe it's legal. I believe that when it was adopted by the PSC, that they didn't have the legal right to do so. And this is what we're going to try to prove in our intervention with our formal complaint at the PSC that we've already filed.
We are looking strongly toward the abolishment of the factor that we've got now, and coming back with something along the line that the Georgia Commission has that gives this commission a hearing process and a decision-making role in that cost recovery.
It's designed to recover cost, and the part that causes us the most problem, but it always happens this way, you have to estimate usage and how you're going to produce electricity for the next month. Sometimes that estimate does not work out. You don't know what the rainfall is going to be. You don't know what mechanical problems you'll have. But that estimate factor in that formula seems to be a problem at times.
No doubt that it is hurting the consumers in Alabama. And I don't mean to say but that we've been able to prove that the company's collecting more than they're spending, and that is what is supposed to be the bottom line of any cost adjustment related to fuel, is that the company recoups only that which it spends for fuel. But we've got a lot of projections in ours, guesswork as I call it, that I think gives the company a little opportunity to manipulate that perhaps it has done. I can't prove that either. But there's too many factors that appeared to me that in February the company knew they could not produce up to the level which they told us they would in March. And that deferred some costs that should have been recouped at that time and put a very heavy burden on in May.
No matter how the PSC wants to go about changing the system, you'll still have to get the same type of recovery.
But it's a cost that you must recover, and you must recover it on a timely basis, or else you won't be able to provide the service that you're charged to do.
The way it's set up now, that's exactly what they can do. They can walk in any time that they feel like it, once a month, and they can ask for what they want, and unless they can sit there really within 3 days and prove that their figure's wrong, they don't need it to get it. The consumer's hands are tied, the PSC's hands are tied, and it's an unfair way of handling things. And I feel like that that just shows another way that the power company, telephone company, and of course the telephone company don't have this, and neither does the gas company. So we're really talking about the power company, aren't we?
In the Alabama plan, unfortunately, I do not see any incentive for the company to try to excel in its management or its plant operation. And I think that needs to be in it. We're extremely lacking in all of our regulatory functions in Alabama. I think in the responsibility for management, or management responsibility in the utility companies. For an example, if a company makes a mistake which costs them $1 million, it appears that they just turn around and recoup it from the consumers. Every other business we know of, if they make a mistake of their own action, they have to eat that mistake. And we've got to get some of that back in to regulation here, to putting that responsibility for the management decisions back on the shoulders of the company.
Steve's trying to draw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, man.
Since late 1974, Alabama Power Company customers have been paying for not only the base rate for electricity they've used, but also for another fluctuating amount that is designed to represent the varying cost of coal and other fuels. But the Consumer Alliance thinks the PSC has been wrong to allow the monthly adjustment to be passed along.
There has never been authority granted the Public Service Commission by the legislature to allow the commission to implement a monthly pass-on of fuel cost by utility.
Wilson wants the PSC to refund every penny that's been collected under the adjustment for the last 6.5 years. Wilson has asked to be a part of the scheduled hearing at the PSC tomorrow, during which the fuel adjustment charge will be reviewed. Several weeks ago, Commissioner Jim Folsom Jr. and PSC President Billy Joe Camp asked for the hearing when Alabama Power presented a record-high $12.85 per 1,000 kilowatt-hour adjustment figure. Power company officials say the fuel adjustment charge is legal, but even if the method were changed, the company says the fluctuating fuel prices would still have to be passed on, either through what they describe as expensive, cumbersome, and lengthy rate hearings or quarterly fuel adjustment hearings. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
No other governor has tried to veto line items in the budget, but James says he may ask the Supreme Court for an opinion about its legality, and he says he won't hesitate to kill the whole budget if the legislature's version would force the state schools into a 4th year of proration. He also says he can't accept the proposed current use property tax bill. That bill would allow tax breaks for certain forest and farmland owners. James says he's afraid of the impact of the current use bill on revenue going to local schools. So he plans to ask the legislature to approve changes to ensure there will be no loss of money to those local schools. The governor also says he may use his veto power to kill 2 bills aimed at protecting state employees from a proposed reclassification plan. He objects to one bill that would set up a legislative committee to review any reclassification plans, and another bill that guarantees no loss of salaries or benefits if state employees are reclassified.
I'd say let's pass a law right now that guarantees everybody in the state of Alabama no loss of benefits ever for the rest of their lives, period. No matter how inefficient it is, what the quality of the product of the service is, and that ought to make everybody happy. That's the kind of lunacy that is inbred on our system that has become totally saturated with political instincts.
Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Not received.
It's Commissioner Frank Bray's plan to employ 52 youngsters this summer. Bray says by giving the youngsters something to do, the jobs will teach a good work ethic and at the same time attack crime, specifically black-on-black crime. The kids will work in the county recreation or engineering departments, on the courthouse grounds, and in the community action centers. They'll work 4 hours a day and earn a total of $831. Bray says the jobs will be for those who fall at or below the poverty level, and he says the Community Action Agency will assist in the program. In other business, the Commission extended from July 31st to October 1st the deadline for the Tumbling Waters Flag Museum to either vacate the Carnegie Building or move upstairs to the second floor so the County Law Library can move to the main floor, or it can move in the basement of the building. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
On your handout, you show me still as president of the PTA. How about putting in there press corps immediate past president of the Alabama Congress of Parents and Teachers and Governor?
Alabama school children.
To be associated with Governor James and his fine administration. And I wholeheartedly support and endorse, and as a private citizen once again shall continue to do so, his efforts to bring efficiency and economy and much needed reform to our state government. So again, Governor, it's been my great pleasure to work with you, administration, and to work with aging programs and health planning programs.
When most car dealerships buy new cars, they borrow the money from a bank and repay the money as the cars are sold. In addition, they pay interest on the money still unpaid for cars they haven't yet sold. The system is perfectly legal. It's done all the time, and it's called floor planning. Obviously, because so much money is involved, most banks check to be sure that the cars haven't been sold without the dealership paying the bank that part of the money. But not always, and that appears to be the case here in Dallas County at one dealership. And the FBI and the state police are investigating a former Selma car dealer named Julius Davis in connection with floor planning here. They charged that Davis was using floor planning but was selling cars without paying the First Dallas County Bank the money he had borrowed for those cars. They also charged that the bank wasn't checking on Davis's inventory of cars the way banks usually do to protect themselves. Jim Priestley, the man who was president of this bank, was fired this past December, allegedly right after auditors discovered that the bank wasn't following that procedure. I've been told that the Dallas County Bank may lose hundreds of thousands of dollars because of what investigators say happened. In addition to the alleged misuse and mismanagement of the floor planning system, investigators believe that a multiple sale scam may have been used in one case. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, Selma, Alabama.
I would like to give you a little bit of history to bring you up to that question of my prepared remarks, and hopefully I'll be able to.
Leisinger, the title of his presentation today is
The drilling of these wells is very expensive, ranging right now from as much as $6 million to $15 million for a single well. You can compare this to the cost of drilling a shallow well of about 3,000 feet here in northwest Alabama of about $250,000. So you can see that the rewards, the reserves, have to be much greater simply to support this economic investment.
But we have no intentions of allowing a proration budget. Of course, a simple majority overrides my veto there, and amendments can be overridden quite easy with a simple majority.
The governor says if he doesn't like the budgets the legislature passes, he may consider line item vetoes, though he's not sure the courts would accept that action. No governor has vetoed specific line items in a budget before, and James says he's looking into the legality of the idea. The governor also repeated his plea for reform in state government and his promise to call a special session so legislators can consider his package of reforms without the distraction of other issues. James says he plans to go on the road to get public support of his reforms, and he says he welcomes the Company of Education board member Ron Creel and others who've threatened to follow the governor and speak against his reform measures. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The key to the play is to get the tight ends ass off the line.
My grandson's reading them here.
Okay. Coach, you sure did look scholarly getting your your PhD last night.
Yeah, you wanted me to represent you someplace?
Well, I was thinking about that. I was honorary coach, and it didn't help me. Now, I wonder if you're going to get into practice of law when you get tired of it.
No, I don't think so. I don't feel any brighter than I did yesterday morning. But I'm flattered and highly pleased and very honored that they gave it to me.
Let me ask you something about the new arrangement with the Sugar Bowl. Obviously, that's going to help a lot. More money. What do you think about the nighttime play?
Well, I think that's the only time we got any kind of money. But personally, I don't like play at night. It's just too long to wait. But that doesn't mean what I like. And I think it takes something out of our team, or almost anyone's team. But both teams has to play at night. Me personally, I'd rather play a game at 11 o'clock in the morning. I like those early TV games where you get it over with. But that doesn't matter because they feel like they draw better then, and that's the big thing is to put people in the park, put people by the tube, and where they can pay for it.
What do you think the money will be? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I know what it'll be, but I'm right off the top of my head. I don't know. I've seen what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Much better.
It's much better, much better. And Another thing, of course, it's important to me, and we may never be down there again, but is you know what the temperature is. You know you're going to have a dry day.
Know where the wind is.
Know where the wind is.
Do you think them waiving the most recent appearance rule was for your benefit? They want to have every chance.
Well, I think not for us, but I think they're entitled to that, really. Not for us, but it might be anyone. Someone comes up with a team that has much more color or something than the other. I think they should be entitled to that because they have a hard time peddling those ads now. And of course, the last couple of years it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But I don't think we'll be involved in it in the very near future, but someone might.
No matter what kind of work you need done on your car, the first thing to do is look for a reliable mechanic. If you suspect you have trouble, have it checked out as soon as possible so that small problems don't become large ones. And for large repair jobs, comparison shop, get estimates, and look over the facilities if you can. Replacing a carburetor has increased 61.7% since 1975. Changing the oil and filter has increased 39.2%. A tune-up, 61.5%, and replacing a front bumper has gone from $260.46 to $539.96. Replacing a radiator hose is up 54.4%, rotating tires up 61.5%, and replacing and repacking front wheel bearings has increased 48.1%. So as you can see, everything is more expensive, and to make sure you're not being ripped off, don't authorize any work unless you understand exactly what's to be done. Get an itemized bill and check it against estimates or authorization forms. And if you suspect you've been overcharged for parts, ask to see the supplier's parts price list. It gives estimated retail prices as well. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
And as far south as the Lowndes line on 85.
During questioning by her attorney, Walter Chandler, the plaintiff, Mrs. Esther May, charged that the company knew her husband, Glenn May, had a diabetic condition when the policy was written, a year before he died as a result of the illness. But the agent falsified the medical section of the insurance application. Union National Attorney Ollie Bland says the firm denies any fraud and tried to show that agents selling the $3,000 policy weren't given the proper information by the Mays. In his opening statement, Walter Chandler told the jury it was a common practice for the agents of Union National to, quote, breeze through the medical questions on the applications, and if medical conditions worsened, the company would return the premium to avoid paying off claims by policyholders. Mrs. May said from the stand today that she also had a fire insurance policy with Union National, and a fire which occurred at her home after her husband's death was the only way that allowed her to pay the funeral bill. She said she used the fire insurance claim to pay funeral costs. At least 20 witnesses were sworn in for testimony in this case. The jury is expected to receive the case late tomorrow. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the federal court.
Bronner says the teachers' retirement system needs $183 million from the state next year to remain financially sound. And he says though the governor's proposed budget adequately funds retirement, the various measures now in conference committee do not. He says if the state doesn't give its share to retirement, it will affect the state's credit rating, as well as benefits going to the public employees who've put money into the system. He calls the approach absurd and irresponsible and says it's the first time in 40 years that the legislature has tried to renege on its share of retirement contributions. He says some legislators are purposely trying to decrease the state's share, but says that can't be done without first decreasing benefits. He says if the legislature passes any of the proposed budgets without adequate funding, he'll go to court. And he says if by some remote chance he loses in court, he'll ask that all state employees and teachers simply stop working.
What I'm trying to emphasize is the seriousness of attacking a system like this, because what you're doing is a complete roust on the public and on the employees. What you're doing basically is stealing from the public employees that put their money aside and said that you have something. And that is the only possible way that I can come across to people to say that I'm dead serious.
Bronner says cutting $17 to $30 million out of the state's retirement obligations represents a trend that could lead Alabama to financial problems similar to those New York City faces. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News. Just as with any private system, the state employees' retirement system requires that the workers contribute to the fund, and so does the employer, in this case the state. But Bronner says proposed budgets now before a legislative conference committee take away at least $17 million from the amount the state is obligated to contribute to the retirement fund next year. Bronner calls the move a raid on the retirement system, an attempt to steal money that has been promised to state employees. And he says if an underfunded budget passes, he'll file a lawsuit against the state. If he were to lose the lawsuit, then Bronner says he'll take a more drastic step.
I am so serious about this that I would suggest to you that I would not only endorse and support, but I would ask to join with the citizens of Alabama and the public employees of Alabama to totally and completely shut down the state government of Alabama until these existing obligations are properly funded.
He says the intentional attempt to underfund retirement is an unprecedented move, not made by any Alabama legislature in 40 years. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Reed says unlike the mayor's proposal, his plan would assure the likelihood of continuing the 4 predominantly black council districts. He said it would preserve a great portion of all the existing districts by using the city's main thoroughfares as boundary lines. Reed says in his plan, the population deviation between districts is less than 1%, where 2 districts in the mayor's plan had a 2% deviation. He says the mayor's plan also disregards a document signed by the council members during the annexation procedure.
Because we entered an agreement, it's signed, sealed, and delivered, that if we got annexation through, every effort will be made to ensure that council members will not be gerrymandered out of their district.
He says even though the mayor's plan kept each one of the current council members in their districts, some were still gerrymandered because their districts were taken away from them. Councilman John Starr and Bill Nunn voiced some disagreement to the way Reed had the lines drawn, but Reed says he'd have no objection if some council members wanted to shift neighborhoods with each other. City planner statistician Judy Waldrop attended the meeting and says she'll verify Reed's plan and get back with the committee by Friday afternoon. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
And this plan was put together.
Power company officials say the existing fuel adjustment rate clause is designed to recover fuel costs, prevent losses, and pass savings on to the consumer. Officials call the current method a non-profit mechanism that complies with federal regulations as well as studies conducted by 2 auditing firms. For those reasons, Alabama Power filed for dismissal of the PSC's complaint to show why the automatic energy adjustment clause can't be changed or abolished. Alabama Power representatives say the auditing reports show the current fuel adjustment method is appropriate, but says it's willing to consider improvements so long as the company isn't denied proper recovery of fuel costs. Several suggestions were offered for improvement of the current clause, including one from Alabama Industrial Board Representative Patricia Olney. She suggested adoption of Georgia Power's fuel adjustment method conducted on a quarterly basis. Georgia PSC officials attended the hearing and were expected to explain how their fuel adjustment rate operates. Commissioner Billy Joe Camp says hearings will continue until some reasonable method is reached. Sources say the PSC is leaning favorably to Georgia Power's 3-month fuel adjustment rate method. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
I'm sorry. Sure, Mr. Golson. Thank you.
Ms. Howard, has this been taken up with the Parks and Recreation?
I would like for Mrs. Howard to be conscious of what happened.
Members of council, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the reading.
1980, all of the 7 basic on a highway which fell outside the city limits for some reason or other. Four is that you call out. That's correct. But the ordinance is self-explanatory, Mrs. Moore now decides that the board can substitute.
Questions? Service program for children through the school food service section of Alabama State Department of Education.
For several requests made by the Bellingraph Community Council and staff regarding the needs of our community. The Bellingraph Community Council feels that there are certain needs that should be filled.
That Denise has progressed to her present level of skill is remarkable. Just 6 years ago, there was no gymnastics program in Prattville. Otis Reeves, the YMCA's Director of Sports, started it, knowing practically nothing. As Denise and the others in the class slowly progressed, so did Otis as the coach by attending meets and clinics all over the southeastern United States. You and your coach have, in a sense, learned together, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
How did you get started in this?
They just had a program at the Y, and I was, my parents wanted me to enroll in it.
How hard have you worked to get ready for this competition coming up?
I've worked every day for about 4 hours.
You feel good about your training?
Yes, sir.
The thing you did on the vault